So Harry and I doing a benefit. Pete was doing a benefit for Harry's thing on Long Island. It wasn't a hunger benefit. The first one was for a Long Island theater group. And anyway, and Pete was a great hero of ours, and I'm young and Harry's young, but Harry had become a star already, so we were doing it. And right before the show, this college kid comes in or a high school kid, to interview Pete. He says, "Mr. Seeger, you spent your whole life doing these benefits. Has it ever made any difference?" And Pete says, "I don't know. But what I do know is that I've met the good people. People with live hearts, live eyes, live minds." And yesterday, when I was talking to we spent this day with the Green Valley Swarita Samaritans, who were just trying to keep people alive in the desert who were going across, not helping them escape or anything, just making sure they have blankets or something. And I thought, this is true. That's, and especially as you get older, you're 20 and you want to get girls or whatever, you want to be famous, and then you're writing these songs, how am I going to hit record? And then as you get, now I'm in my 70s, and what you're looking for is these moments that, and the writing and stuff, and I have kids and grandchildren, and you're looking for things that can move you in a positive way, in a long-term way, and meet the good people, the good people, and that really felt like a day that was a wonderful day for us to be there.
Oh, great. So I want to start with your family, because your career is intertwined with your brothers, Harry,
Sure.
and your father. So I'm going to start there. Let's start with your parents. And you're from a family of artists. Tell me about the family of artists.
One grandfather was Kenneth Burke, a critic, author, the editor of the Dial in the village. Know everybody in the village in the 20s. John Dos Passos, and he was a friend of and he got Robert Frost published in the Dial, and my other grandfather, they were friends because my other grandfather was a painter, James Chapin, and his son and Kenneth Burke's daughter married. His son was my father, Jim Chapin, very famous to a small number of people, jazz drummers, because he wrote a book in 1948 called Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, and it's still one of the Bibles for a jazz drummer. And it was amazing to watch him teach. He became a great teacher, of drums. And that's how he spent his life doing that, and then playing. He always said, "I never played with the best players," and that's my big regret. But he played, weekends and all the time, just playing in trios and stuff his whole life. First of all, in the big band era, the Glenn Gray Orchestra and those things. And when that died, he just played music and wheels. That's my dad. My mom was involved in publishing in various things and did a lot of different things. An artist in terms of making sewing stuff, and also loved opera. So there's a lot of music in the house, although my mom and dad divorced when I was 3, and he was off with women and playing music. And but my grandma, Chapin, my father's mother, wanted her 4 boys, James, Harry, Tom, Steve, at that point there were only 4 of us, to learn the language of music. And she put us in the Greenwich House Music School in the village.
Oh, okay.
James took piano. James is the oldest. A year younger was Harry. He took trumpet. I took clarinet for 5 years under duress. And Steve took piano. And Harry was a good piano, really had a tough teacher, was a good trumpet player. Steve always says, Harry was a trumpet, But the year we got, when I was 12, well, let me back up a little bit. So after we moved out, when my mother remarried, we moved to Brooklyn Heights. He bought a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights in 1953. And my mother found out that there was in fact, one of the kids in my school, PS8 right there, I came home one day and said, Bruce Ketchum's going to try out for a boys choir. And my mom goes, where? Which one? When? She found out it was Grace Church, Brooklyn Heights. And a week later, she drags me the whole length of Brooklyn Heights. No, I don't want to. I'm 8 years old. Puts me in front of Ann McKittrick, the choir director. And she goes, okay, hit this note, ding, 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 da, 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 sing me a song, happy birthday to you. And I could read music, because of clarinet. I've been doing it for over a year. So because I could read the music and I could do the thing, boom, I'm on the chancel. And so then my mother was like, it's heaven. You got Tuesday, Thursday afternoon, Friday night, taken care of, and Sunday mornings. Because she had 4 boys in the city. What do you do with your kids during the day? Steve did the same thing. So Harry was never in the choir. He was a little older. But as Steve says, he hung around the girls' choir a little bit. But it was a choir of boys and men, soprano boys and men. And it was a wonderful choir. So we did that. So now I'm 12, Harry is 14, Steve's 11. We're pretty good musicians because we've been taking lessons. And we have choir boys who can harmonize like crazy. And we hear a recording called The Weavers at Carnegie Hall. It's a seminal recording by Pete Seeger, Ronnie Gilbert, Lee Hayes, and Fred Hellerman, the first American folk group. Pete Seeger invented the folk singer and the folk group. They had hits in the late 40s. So long, been good to know you on the hit parade. Irene, good night.
That's their biggest song.
But then they were blacklisted because of Pete's left-wing communist, that whole thing. But in 1955, their manager said, I think it's time to do Carnegie Hall again. And it sold out in 2 hours, and they recorded it. And that became kind of one of the primers for everybody in the folk who followed. Tom Paxton and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and all those people, and the Chapin Boys. We listened to that record, The Weavers at Carnegie Hall, a whole summer. End of the summer, Harry says, we could do that. And he gets a banjo. That was in my grandma Chapin's basement. It was her brothers had bought it in 1910. I still have it.
Oh, you do?
And he got it fixed up, and I got a guitar, and we became the Chapin Brothers. And we started singing music all through high school and college, until we finally broke up, and Harry was doing film and stuff. But that's where we learned.
Okay, before that, you do a couple of TV shows. How did you did your father help you get connected? First you do the Canadian show, right?
Yeah. That one, the Canadian was Let's Sing Out with Oscar Brand. Now, he was in the city, and he had a radio show, the longest running radio show on NYC, of folk music. So they were looking for folk people in the village, and they found that. The one with, and the Merv Griffin show we did as Chapin Brothers, and I don't know how he got that.
Because your dad's with you, correct?
My dad was playing with us, and Merv loved the fact that Dad was with us. But they usually had people like looking for new young talent and stuff, and somebody connected it. Somebody from his show was, because we were playing in the village. We were playing, what used to be what they call now open mic nights were then hootenannies, and every Tuesday night or Wednesday night or something like that. We go and play, and we came with with my dad's drums, and we were the first folk group to have a relay drummer, and we just pick up some of the acoustic guitars and play, and so that was one summer we played with my dad, and so I don't know how he got on Merv Griffin, but Merv had and Dad knew each other, So I don't know if he actually made the connection, but it made it easy to get on Merv once they knew that Dad was part of it, and he loved having us on that. It's on my website.
Why did Harry leave and go to Africa to do? Why did he leave the group?
The group at that point was I was still in school, and every summer we played. But this was Harry. I was at Plattsburgh State, way upstate, and Steve was at Clarkson in Potsdam, and we were 90 miles apart. And every weekend we'd play. We had a band that played, and just doing covers. And Harry was ostensibly the bass player, and he'd come up basically to date girls and to see his brothers and make music. And during the week he was working in documentary films, and so we were not doing it full time. I was at Plattsburgh, and I'd been an All-American, smaller college, honorable mention All-American basketball player. So, and it was the Vietnam War. So I did 4 years, and I was supposed to graduate in '66. And I had that's another story, but I had offered to go to a training camp with the St. Louis Hawks.
Really?
And I looked at them, and the Vietnam War is raging, and school is keeping me out of the war. And I look at it's Bill Bridges and Jumpin' Joe Caldwell and Zelmo Beatty and this incredible forecourt, and I'm 6'5", 185, skinny white guy. I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to make this. So I didn't go, and the school offered me a free ride to go to graduate school if I coached JV basketball and JV baseball and taught a swimming class. And I wasn't sure because we spent all the summer as the Chapin brothers singing. But my mom was happy to have us in school, and then I thought, okay. If we try to do music, the best I can do is get in the ROTC or something, do 6 months of that, and maybe get it. So I went back to school. Steve was still going. He wanted to go back to school. He was a year behind me, and so we went back to college. But that whole year, we were playing music on the weekends, and Harry would come up and sort of bash through whatever the hit parade was. It was all the '60s stuff. And he was a terrible bass player, and he's still not what he could do. So. And then he got a job. He was doing documentary films, and he got a job as sound man with Jim Lipscomb to go do a film about the World Bank in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and to meet they'll be there for like 2 or 3 months. So he left because it was a great job, and he instead of waiting, he would come to the weekends with us. When he left, there was a good bass player in the. Leon Agnabine, who was in my class, and I said, Leon, you want to play bass with us? And all of a sudden, it sounded like a band,
Okay.
And we would rehearse during the week. And Harry comes back, and Steve says, you got to tell him. So we kicked him out of that.
Was he upset?
Very. It was a big turning point for him, I think. On the other hand, he had a whole full life and stuff, but because he was trying to be a poet. He was already out of school. He flunked out twice from Cornell, had gone to the Air Force Academy, and then got out of that, and that became his service. He went to the basic training in the Air Force Academy. Then he got back. Anyway, this is very complicated stuff.
Okay.
But basically, he was living in New York, dating and getting odd jobs. In our uncle, part of my arts, was Ricky Leacock of Leacock Pennybankers, one of the great documentary filmmakers.
Okay.
And he had a job with Ricky when he was flunking out of school. So he was working in documentary films. But what that meant was you'd take sound, or you'd sit at the machine and put the sound and the thing together, and so he was just involved in that whole.
He's mixing it.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
exactly. So he was doing all that, and so when the kicking out was really just getting out of that first band, which was a weekend band up there. But then we never did put that Chapin thing, the brothers again together. And Steve was happy to not have that. Harry was very all over the map, not sure what he was doing, and we were trying to sort of figure out what our life was as well. So it had to happen at some point, and that happened that year.
So how do you end up at the Village Gate?
Harry was hanging around the Sherwoods, which was the Whiffenpoofs, which is like an a cappella group. Whiffenpoofs are in Yale, the very famous ones. The Sherwoods were the a cappella singing group, men's singing group at Cornell. And Harry kept trying to get in it, but he didn't sing well enough in tune like a choir guy. But he got very friendly with a guy named Fred Cooley. And Fred Cooley decided he was going to manage the Chapin boys. And he managed one summer the Chapin brothers. And then he decided he was going to manage, and then now I had a band, Steve and I had a band with Tom and Steve and two local guys, Doug Walker, who played wonderful guitar player, electric guitar player, and Phil Forbes on drums. And so Fred came down to manage us for the summer. And Harry was going to help, sort of. And anyway, so Fred got Art DeLugoff, who owned the Village Gate. We could rent it after Jacques Brel is alive and well and living in Paris.
Jacques Brel?
The Jacques Brel show was at like 7 o'clock every night. And so
He's great.
Well, it wasn't him himself. It was the show that was about him. It was a famous show in the Village called Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris. And it was a 4-person show, 2 women and 2 men, and they did all his music. And it was at the Village Gate, and it ended at 9 o'clock. And so Arthur Lugos said, "Oh, you can have it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday every week for $400." So we rented it, and we had gotten a wonderful review from Rock Magazine, which said, "The best band I've seen this year." The Chapins, we were called. It's not without Harry, but the Chapins, the best band we've seen this year. So we got a banner, and we hung it out there, and we hoped that one of the tourist buses would stop and come in. And our wives did the door. And so the whole summer, we played 4 nights a week. That was also the summer when I got my TV show Make-A-Wish. So I was doing Make-A-Wish at the same time, and then at night playing
Okay,
at the Village.
how'd you get Make-A-Wish? It's 1971, correct?
It's 1971. It's the same summer that Harry got back into music, too. That was an amazing summer. So that's Jim Lipscomb, who was a great friend of Harry's. He was the one that he went to a documentary filmmaker, a wonderful documentary. I don't know if you ever saw the polar bear special on TV where there were guys in a cage with that a Nova thing.
Yeah.
He did that. He was the guy in the cage, and but he also did Water Right Death. And he really famous documentary filmmaker. He calls me up, and I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a different thing. Make-A-Wish was in. We were being managed by the guy in. Forget that Jim Lipscomb. That's a different story entirely. The way I got Make-A-Wish was that Paul Cooley, who owned and ran The Bitter End, was our manager for 1 year. The Chapins played opening acts at the Bitter End for everybody. You know, Elephant, David Steinberg, you know, whoever was the lead. Every 2 weeks we'd be opening act for somebody, and we were good. And Harry was writing songs for us. So, but after a year there, we only played one other gig. And we were not making enough money to survive, and so we decided to leave Paul and try to do something else. And of course, Steve says, "You tell him." So the lawyer was talking with us, you know, and he said, "Well, you got maybe so you want to, yeah." So I go in and just tell Paul Colby that we're firing him. And he said, "I'm a great manager." I said, "I know you are, Paul, but we're going to try something different." And I'm about to leave. He goes, "By the way, Doris, these people have been calling us about folk singers for some kids' TV show." And Doris says, "You show this to Tom. I think he'd be good." So here, you want the number? Yeah, okay, give me the number. So I called him up, and went and met him, and they bring your guitar, and I sat in Central Park. In front of a camera and sang "Sweet Baby James," you know, something. And a week later, I get a call, and I talked to the guys. They'd asked John Denver first. He said no, and then that's how I got it. You know, and
you did it for 5 or 6 years, right?
Did it 5 years. It won Emmy and a Peabody. Once it won the Emmy at the 5th year, they let it go. And it was a great show. And I got Harry the job of writing songs. And he made his first serious money doing that. In fact, he made more money than I did as the host. There were 13 shows that ran, you know, 3 times a year each. And he wrote 26 songs, one of which was "All My Life's a Circle," which is
that's your song, yeah.
That he wrote for me and for that show. And it's the only song that's lasted of those. He wrote.
Where was your show? I'd never seen the show.
It was on Sunday mornings, 75, but the problem was, the reason nobody's seen it ever since, is it was done by the ABC News, and it had unbelievable footage, and very quickly. I made a wish a bull to be, imagine all the possibilities. If you were a bull, you could be a bullfrog. A bull is not a ring, but there is a bull ring in which there's a torero who has a bull, and blah, blah, blah. It was this wonderful word game. There were two in 23 minutes, whatever it was, for a half-hour show. There were 2 words, and we had 2 songs. Little one, you know, and said the word is circle. Imagine all the possibilities. If you were a circle, you could be a ring and it was all the word stuff. But the cuts were like this.
And there was
really
animation
fast.
too, wasn't there?
And animation as well. And so, but they never got the rights for all the footage they used. It was and it's, I mean, they used Charlie Chaplin, and then the next one would be a news thing, and then there would be the piece of a movie, and then a piece of it's all the stuff. He just gets a guy just cut him up and put him in. And I remember Lester Cooper, who put it together, said, so we made a deal with this guy to do to cut the film. But he didn't realize how many cuts there were. He says, there's more cuts in a half hour than as many cuts as there was in Gone with the Wind, because he would cut, it's little. I made a wish a bull to be. No, I don't know about that. It was very fast cuts, which nowadays can be standard, but that was the first time ever.
The guy from Yellow Submarine, he worked on it too?
One of the guys who on Yellow Submarine worked on it. Yeah, it was an interesting crew and a wonderful show, really erudite. And also, that gave me a whole career in colleges, because it was on Saturday morning, 11:30, and then it was NCAA football.
Oh, boy.
And so college kids watched Rocky and Bullwinkle, Make-A-Wish, and then NCAA football, on Saturday mornings. On Sunday, it would be NFL football. And a lot of college kids. So I went and started doing colleges as a solo.
So your brother's opening up for you.
Yeah. At the Village Gate.
At the Village Gate, it's not going well. What happens next?
The first week he comes and tries to sing his songs. It was raining hard in Frisco. I needed to fund my fare to make my night. So he did the first week, and it bombed. He had a hard time. We were a good band, but he was just a solo trying to do these long songs. And he decided, I need a band. So the first week he does that. Second week he puts an ad in the Village Voice. Starts talking to they have it, and Fred Cooley helps him, and so did we. And he gets John Wallace, who was in a choir with us. Wonderful singer who could play up some bass, and now driving a truck. And the truck was broken, so I'll come with you here. And he had the idea of getting a cello, and so they got Tim Scott, and they had and a wonderful fingerstyle guitarist. And all of a sudden he started rehearsing in my mom's apartment in Brooklyn, and Steve and I were there. We helped every day, putting a set together. And it's either 1 or 2 weeks of that, and at that point it was being called Harry, the band Harry,
It's different.
And then and the stuff was just really good, and the arrangements were terrific. Now Fred Cooley and Steve, we were choir boys, so we had to arrange voices. Fred Cooley was the head of the Sherwoods, who were a cappella band, so and we had some great singers, So they had oud parts, and they had the cello. And so Harry came and opened for us, and it was a revelation. You hear Taxi, with the cello, and this fabulous song. It's a movie, and the whole center is like it's a whole opera, And he had John Wallace, "Baby so high," with this incredible voice, and at that point he was a great bass, but he had this incredible falsetto, and he used all that stuff. And being a filmmaker and a poet, it was a perfect match of what.
So it's just like a rocket ship, correct?
Well, he also busted his ass in a way that Steve and I were shy about calling people and doing stuff, and he was just, he had been working in the real world as a documentary filmmaker, and so he would just. Okay, we're going to call, and he and Fred would just sit there and say, okay, we're going to call all these people. Come down and see this guy, Harry Chapin. Yeah, hi, this is Joe Schmo. I'm going to tell you about this guy. Harry Chapin, can you come down? Yeah, we'll leave you a ticket, blah, 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 And it worked, and as Jack Holzman later says in the film, I don't know if you looked at the film.
Yeah, I watched a little bit.
Well, he said, I never saw a salesman like Harry. He was just astonishing. How he could just, and it's true with the hunger stuff as well. Something he believed in. He was just relentless and charming, and you got to come. He was that way with us too, as a kids. It was like Harry was always, two's company, Harry's a crowd.
I did like that a lot.
And he said, he was like, we can do this. Hey, let's. And so he was always the big, like let's do this, you know. And that was his whole life was like that.
So the record company, Columbia Electric, they start fighting over him, and he gets a great deal, correct?
Yeah.
And so he's on top of the world. I know he worked hard. What I wanted to ask you, the first album, you're in your band. Did you want to join his band then, or did he?
Oh, no. Harry, I love Harry always dearly, my older brother. But when we were in a band with him already, we'd been in the band, you know. It was like, the problem is with Harry is it's a searchlight. It's like you, and you know, and when you're working in a band situation with him, it basically is you're forgotten for a while, you know.
Okay.
The whole thing is forgotten, you know, and so. And the band finally really was Harry about his career and his music, which is great, you know. But I did work with him when he did the Broadway show. You know, Cats in the Cradle came out, it was the #1 hit in America. Anybody else, and what he should have done was just toured at that point, and make the good money, and then you know, and solidified. Instead, he had a Broadway show. I'm going to do a Broadway show, and it was a half-assed show, and not great. Wrong people doing it. They didn't quite know what they wanted, and Harry, none of us quite knew what we wanted. But he hired me as his understudy. Never got on. And Steve and John and his band playing.
What's it about? It's the night that made America famous,
Yeah,
right?
right.
What's it about? I don't know what it's about.
I don't even know what it's about.
Okay, sorry.
There was a song he wrote called "The Night That Made America Famous" about this fire that took place in a small town, in a hippie, you know, the hippie house, and the firemen take their time to get there. And it actually happened in one of the towns in Long Island. You know, they got a funky the drug house, and you know, and they supposedly the firemen let it go. So Harry wrote this song about it, but a long story song, which is I always thought was a great idea, not quite actualized. You know, but the chorus. It was the night that made America famous. Da, da, da. You can look it up and
on those first 4 or 5 albums, they all go gold. Did you work on the albums? I mean, you must have worked a little bit, right?
It depended whether they needed a guitar or a banjo or something. The early ones, I was busy doing stuff. Steve worked on all of them.
We did.
And he produced a lot of them because he was the piano player on all those. Harry had it. Depending who the producer was. Paul Lecca had you know John Tropea and these amazing he got the great players to play, and drummers and the whole thing. So it really varied. But there were a couple of them like that one, the Living Room Suite. I played almost all the guitars on that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because Chet Plotkin really wanted Harry to think about the singing, you know. And so I said, great. So I came in and played the guitar and did stuff and you know, we were around, and so if he wanted me, we'd get together, and we were very close. I mean, you know, he'd call me up and say, I remember Cats in the Cradle is #1, right? And he calls me up and he says, he's on the road, Tom, Cats in the Cradle is #1 in all 3 charts, and you know what I'm thinking? I said, what? How do I follow it? He said, isn't this a bitch? You think you get what you want, and already you're worried about the next one. He says, life is crazy. You know?
It's the business you're in. Though.
It is the business.
When you're hot, you're hot.
Yeah, I know, but he was just saying, you know, and so I was one of his people he could talk to because we were both the out front performers. Steve was a behind performer, but I was, you know, that was the kind of stuff that's in a sense, other than the family stuff, that's the thing I miss is that sense of.
It must have been great. Did you? Well, okay. I didn't want to forget this question. There's another brother. Why isn't he not in any of the bands?
He was a little bit deaf.
Oh, I didn't know.
And he was a historian.
Okay.
And not musical.
I didn't know.
He was very musical in the sense he loved music, but
okay.
he didn't want to, you know, say that was it. Yeah.
Okay, I called Jesse Coulter right before I came here because I'm doing her wedding next week. And I said, because I was watching that movie a bit, and there's a still with Waylon in it. Or I don't know if they're singing or talking to Harry. I wanted to ask her a question, but she was too busy. But you must have, or Harry, when you were around Harry, you must have met a lot of people then, right?
Well, you do. I mean, my own stuff, I've met a lot of people. You know,
who'd you meet when you first started out? I mean, you must have met.
Joni Mitchell. I mean, we at the bitter end. You know, everybody, all the folkies, and all the we opened for everybody who came through. You know. I can't even think now, but
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I mean,
did you brothers get along? I mean, did you?
Yeah. We fought too. We were really competitive in the music, not in the music way, because music was a different thing. But in the sports, I became a really good. I was a really good athlete, and Harry was 2 years older than I was. So you kind of kept, when I was younger, you could fight, and he was competitive, and James was competitive, Steve too. That we lived playing ball all the time, and but it's a funny family in the sense that that didn't matter, don't matter. And when Harry became a star, it was like, wow, hey, good for you, And of course, he got a little old being, like Johnny Cash's brother or something, and but you know what? In a certain sense, for me, it was lucky. Don't take this the wrong way. I was broken up when he died, but in terms of my life, being the brother Harry, it was easier. Just because, like I'm a great friend with Livingston Taylor, and James is still, there, and they're good buddies, and said fine. But I mean, there is that thing of being the brother of the star.
Okay.
But I also, he deserved it.
But he treated you okay. He didn't say like, go get us some coffee or something.
Oh, no. He wanted me there, and he was very, very helpful always. It's a loving family, and it wasn't that. It's just a question of when you're looking at how you make your life as a young man. You don't want to be in the shadow, And but I had my whole life. I mean, I had 2 TV shows. I had that. I had Make-A-Wish. Did very well, thank you, and also National Geographic Explorer. I was a host.
I want to ask you about that. How long did you do that for?
4 years, something like that. And then when they took out the guy who found the Titanic. They replaced me with him, which is part of the deal.
How about the shark movie? Tell me about that.
So that's again Jim Lipscomb, this guy I keep mentioning. We were playing tennis up at his place, and he's trying to talk Harry, who had gone to do the World Bank movie. He wanted Harry to come and do the 6 months in the Indian Ocean to film The Great White Shark. Harry didn't want to go. I'm sitting there. I'll go.
Weren't you scared though?
Oh no.
You weren't?
Harry actually, before I went, said, "Hey, I know you. Now look, if something goes going crazy, you don't jump in there and help. I want you coming back,
Yeah.
But I wasn't the diver, and I never saw the great white. We saw hundreds of thousands of sharks in South Africa and all around, but the great white, they came back after 3/4 of getting the whole film, and then went back to South Australia and got the great white. And at that point, that's when we started doing the Village Gate that summer. So I didn't,
The Why Hunger, the organization you started.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because that was a big deal.
Harry and there's a radio DJ in New York who had been a priest, and his name is Bill Ayers, and had a wonderful show forever on this rock at midnight on Sunday night, and he would come in and have people come in and music people. Interview them, and he interviewed me because of my TV show and because of he liked that and the Chapins and stuff. And I finished and I said, "Hey, you ought to get Harry. Here's his number because he'd be great." And so he had Harry. They hit it off. They lived also, 8 miles apart in Long Island, and they began talking about what positive things they could do, and that was how the 2 of them came up with the idea of hunger. This hunger's going on, and it's unnecessary. So they thought, what can we do? Harry thought big. Why don't we do a Bangladesh concert? And he they got the UN and this stuff, and it never quite worked. But in the course of that, Harry and Bill really learned about the hunger stuff. And in other words, the concert never happened. And they realized even if it happened, it's not going to solve anything. What we need is an organization that's going to be here today, next week, because a concert like that is like a flashbulb. Even the Bangladesh concert. In terms of really making a difference in a huge amount of changing the world. It doesn't change the world. It's a fabulous event. So they said, let's start, and they thought it was called then it was called World Hunger Year, WHY. Yeah, Y is their hunger, World Hunger Year. And they began working on it, and Harry funded it by himself by doing all the concerts. So he started doing half of his concerts became funding for that organization.
Was he burning himself out?
He was burning himself close to out sometimes. Yeah, by the end, it was he was running too hard. And so when he got killed, I knew what a driver he was. Because I was doing a lot of his benefits with him. We go to Chicago and play 3 shows in 2 days, 3 shows one day, 2 the next day, and then he says, you know what? There's a 2:30 flight home tonight, and we done 2, and I just want to go to sleep. We have a flight at 7 the next morning. He says, if we drive to Chicago tonight, we get at 2:30, and I gotta be home for breakfast so I can make breakfast, and for the kids.
You see Birdie Ground. I mean, you're also 70-some years. You're not 25
Well,
anymore.
my dad used to say, Tom's a sensible one.
You seem sensible. Did you try to talk to him and say,
Sure.
hey, you're good. This is not going to
It was worrying for all of us, but that was Harry. When you didn't, he was unmanageable. And so, like, for instance, let me finish the story. So
sorry.
you're 2.5 hours from Chicago, at the University of Chicago. And he says, I said, Harry, I really want to go to bed, And he says, okay, don't worry about it, I'll do it myself. Wait. I had this vision, he's going to be driving, fall asleep, and die. And it's going to be on my head for the rest of my life. So I end up driving him, he's sitting there snoring, driving him and driving him to Chicago. We get on this plane. Those are the days you can get the plane, there's seats on it.
Yeah.
And get home, And so that was Harry. He was going to just keep always. He felt like if he wasn't hurting himself, he wasn't just working on the edge. It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard enough.
It's too bad he didn't hire a driver or something.
That's the way it was. Logic was not part of it. It was just like, zzz, And it was his genius and his flaw. He created that himself. The buzz about Harry, and he created those wonderful songs, and he created Why Hunger, and Long Island Cares, and he did this amazing amount of stuff. It's almost as John Wallace used to say. It's like he knew he wasn't going to be here.
That 1976 album was my favorite, the live one.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It almost upsets me when I listen to it sometimes because it just hits home. It's just a better place to be. I think some people are better live.
Yeah, he was. He was killer.
And you're on it a lot.
We just done the Broadway show, and I was opening for him, and I would do 3 songs solo, 3 songs with the band, then Harry, and then we'd be through the whole night. It was wonderful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but I just got really tired of after we went through there was a show in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and this was kind of typical, where Harry didn't show on time. He was late. So I go out there and the audience really wants Harry. There's some audiences who are great to see me and stuff, but this one was one of those ways. It's so hard. It did hard thing. Do 3 songs, do 4 songs with the band. Harry's not there yet, so we come off, and then promoter, you got to go on. They're crazy. You got to go back out. And so I did, and that was hard. And Harry then finally shows up, and I've had it up to here with this, doing this, covering in this issue, and blaming me for this,
Yeah.
So Harry shows up, and I walk, and I tell him, I'm out of here. And he goes, what? Oh, okay. And he goes on and does the show. And I start driving home, and I thought, and I'm driving home, so I get an hour and a half home. I get about half an hour, 45 minutes down, and I stop. And I call Bonnie, and I'm home. This was before cell phones, I'm like, get a phone call. I called home and I said, you know what, I'm talking to her, this is what happened, and I said, you know what, it's not Harry's fault. It's my fault. What am I putting myself in this situation for? I'm going back. And Bonnie goes, what? What are you, because she didn't know what happened in the first place. I call up to tell her how, and I said, you know what he did to me? And then I realized, this is me. It's my choice, not his. He's got his world, and do I fit in it or not? I don't know. So I turn around and I drive back. I get there just in time for Circle, which is the song. He always said, I wrote this for my brother Tom.
It's great.
You know, right? So I get there, and there I am. I walk out, and I sit down, and he leans across. I love you. And then we finish, you know, and then he goes out to sign, and I walk off, and John Wallace goes, Tom, you blew it. That was the best walkout I've ever seen, and now you come back? And the whole man is joking me. And then Harry comes back, and I just sit down with him and say, listen, I'm going to finish this tour, but I can't be doing this. I'm going to end up hating you and hating this situation. So let me just go my own way. I love you to death. I want to stay that way. Let me do my thing, and you do your thing. And it was the best choice I ever made, you know. And Steve stayed on, and it was trouble. It was just really hard. It was hard to be in that situation.
Did that drive you? Like one of the questions I was going to ask is, one of the things you said he could talk a lot. Did that bug you? You know, some people that talk a lot, you can't get a word in edgewise.
Who, Harry?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that's you're used to that. Yeah, I grew up with this, you know.
So he never changed.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
You change. He gets stronger. He gets all this stuff. You know, there's all this family stuff. But Harry was, in some ways, a genius. You know, as my brother James was. I mean, this was powerful stuff to be around. I loved him to death. He was a sweet. We had 2 older brothers. We had a father who was not there. We had a stepfather who was a total drag. My older brothers were protective, you know, and so they were great.
How was going to New York? I'm not New York. How was going to D.C. with your brother when you played the kids around the steps of the? Oh,
that was great. I mean, I loved doing that. He was an amazing, as I say, amazing salesman, and you know, and just walking in and this is what should be happening. It was wonderful to watch him. It was an astonishing thing to watch him.
How did you keep I was watching that movie a little bit. How did you keep yourself together at the memorial?
I didn't. You saw me crying at the end. The memorial was fantastic, and I've been a crier ever since. You know, and every once in a while I did a show with Gallagher, who just died.
The Smasher stuff.
The guy just died, and. It was a week after Harry died, a week after the memorial. My first show. And I'm opening for Gallagher, because that was the opening act thing. And Gallagher, it's at his college, I forget which college. And he comes to me beforehand, and he says, don't be too good. And I think this is a comedian. I said, no, seriously, don't be too good. This is my hometown, and I'm going to have to follow you, so just don't be too, give me some space. Which is bullshit to say, basically. And so I go, oh, okay. And I get out there and I do a good show. And then I finish with Cats in the Cradle. Harry's just died. My first time singing this thing. And I'm going to hold it together, but I start falling behind. And I finish, and the audience is like, and I'm in my head, I hear Harry's voice going, fuck you, Gallagher. I mean, that's what, you know.
But it must be, I don't have any brothers. I have a couple of sisters. It must be nice to have brothers to mess with, right?
Listen, I was blessed. You know, we were not a moneyed family in any way, but the art stuff was happening. We had a family that really cared. I feel like blessed, and by the speaking of my family, my wife is here.
Oh, really?
They're waiting for. They're waiting.
5 more minutes? Is that okay?
Sure.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah. Get to where we need to get.
Okay.
What you need.
You've done a lot. You started doing a lot of children's albums. You know, I was friends with the Kingston Trio. The last one, Bob just passed away recently. I was friends with his wife, and he said a lot of folk people went into children's music. I didn't know that.
The reason is two reasons. First of all, they became parents. And you're always, and Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and Tom Paxton, and what happens is that you become parents, and folk music is perfect for kids. What is a folk song? A ballad is a singable chorus, really catchy chorus with a story verse. That's a great, and you can tell any kind of story you want. You can tell a story about, I had a turkey dinner, threw the bones away. I went, you can tell, anything, and kid stuff, you make it really clear and simple, it works great for a kid. You have a chorus that goes, we're a family and we're a tree. Our roots go deep down in history, from my great-great-granddaddy reaching up to me. You should have come this morning. I just did
I was
a show.
here like 5-6 years ago. I watched you. They love you.
You watch it? Yeah.
Yeah, they love
Yeah.
you.
Oh,
And I think it's too, because you're so tall. That helps a lot. I mean, you seem like a man. You're a man on stage.
Yeah, well,
You know?
the fact is that also you send the stuff ahead of time. The teachers that the kids learn a few songs.
Oh, they do.
And this is called the thing is called Building Bridges. This thing I did today, and it's songs about relationships, about family trees, about the fact that we're all from someplace else. It's about real things that you can teach, you know, and so the teachers can use it in their curriculum. And then they come to the concert, they already know the songs, and here's this guy leading us all together.
Yeah, they love it.
And the fact of singing together is a powerful thing for anybody, audiences, but for kids, it's magical. And they're going to remember those songs the rest of their lives.
They will.
And as they get older, they go, oh, that's what that meant. Oh, interesting. You know.
And you won I want to hurry too. I don't want to keep you from. You won a bunch of Grammys. You won one in 2004, City of New Orleans.
Yeah.
You won
I was nominated 8 times.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Fabulous. 5 of the music ones, my music things, were my music CDs for kids, were nominated, did not win because we were always against Elmo, you know. And one year it was against Mr. Rogers had died, and it was against Mr. Rogers' thing. But the 3 that I narrated, those they're all songs, but they were books based on songs. Mama Don't Allow, you know, banjo playing. Yeah. And There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. And City of New Orleans, which is, what a great song that is.
Great song.
Great, and he was a great friend of Harry's, Steve Goodman, and mine, who wrote the song. Arlo Guthrie had the big hit with it, and I narrated a children's book. Took me 2 hours, and I get a Grammy. It's not fair, but once in a while, you know, I have these 3 Grammys on my thing. You know, I've been doing this a while, and sometimes things bounce toward you. Harry was nominated as Best New Artist for a Grammy, but never didn't win it.
Pete Seeger's 90th birthday party.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was a totally amazing thing. I get a call from his grandson Tao, who put it together, and he said, "I want you on this because I want Grandpa to like this, you know." Pete. And he said, and so I figured I'd be the 4th guitar player behind Joan Baez singing "This Land Is Your Land" or something. And then he got a call back and says, "You know, Grandpa was on Sesame Street, and he did a song 'Garbage' by Bill Steele." And we were thinking, who could do that? And we said, Tom could do that. So we opened the second half with a song with Oscar the Grouch, the Sesame Street. Check that out, it's on my website.
Okay.
And of me singing garbage, garbage, garbage with Oscar the Grouch, and back and forth, we're doing it together, and my band. And that was and so one of the reviews that said, the most surreal moment was Tom Chapin and Oscar the Grouch at Madison Square Garden singing Garbage like Pete Seeger.
Did you pass it any stuff that you're like, I should have done that? Because I just talked to Tommy James on Friday, and he passed on going to Woodstock. Is that funny?
Yeah, that's, you know, who knew, you know, that it was going to be muddy in 3 days, and oh my God.
Pig farm, yeah.
I don't remember anything that I totally regret. I'm somebody who tends to open the door before I say no, you know. I remember when Make-A-Wish happened, and they said, this children's group, Steve said, what do you want to be, Captain Kangaroo? Are you kidding me? You know, we were trying to be hip kids, you know. But I went and tried it. I went and looked at it and said what it could be. And then it turned out to be a really great show, a kick-ass show that I'm really proud of doing. Same thing with National Geographic. Jim Lipscomb was the one who got me the National Geographic because they were looking for a host, and he said, he called me up, said, you would be really good in this. Don't show him the Make-A-Wish stuff. Just go in and talk to him. And so I did, and he was right. And we sat, and there was a couple of, and that's how I got that one.
Did you have anything to do with the Congressional Gold Medal that your brother got?
I had nothing to do with it. That was Pat Leahy and those folks. You know, the people down in Washington did that. He knew all those folks down there.
So Pat Leahy had to do with it.
Pat Leahy was a great friend of Harry's. They also would ski together up in Vermont. Harry had a place in Vermont. And Pat Leahy just retired right now. And I just been reading his book, actually. Lovely guy.
I was talking to Tom James about this. Wasn't it nice to start when you started? It's a different world now. These entertainers are so different.
You always think that, I'm always a little leery about saying, you should have been there when I was a kid.
It sounds like an old man, but
But I do tell you, it's really the huge thing that has impacted us all was the stealing of our music by the internet. There was a time when you can make a living just as a songwriter, and now very few can. You have to have some kind of major, the fact that you're streaming and you get a hundredth of a cent for the play of the song, whereas radio will pay you, but they won't pay the singer, like Aretha Franklin never got a penny on radio, whereas whoever wrote R.E.S.P. Otis Redding got R.E.S.P. because he wrote it. So the whole thing is not fair. And especially when it became the streaming services, and that's killed us all. So that's really hard. My daughters, who are fabulous singers, the Chapin sisters, having on Lily, and Harry's daughter Jen, the only way you can make money is by touring. They're moms. They have two 7-year-olds, and they have one and a 2-year-old. And you want to have them go on the road full time? We didn't know. No, And in the old days, you'd have your records. You could live, you make a living of it, and do some. So that's the difference. The rest of it, it's always it's always been a strange thing. The other things happened is when the record companies used to. Livingston Taylor always talks about this. He said it's so easy to put stuff up there. A lot of crap gets up there.
Yeah.
And there were also some wonderful stuff, but it's so easy to do. In the old days, there was a gatekeeper. That had its problems too, but it meant that you. That's my wife probably calling me.
She's like, hurry up, stop talking to that guy.
So I think we need to go.
Okay.
They're all waiting.
Thank you so much, sir.
What a pleasure.
Can you sign a couple of things for me before you go?
Absolutely, sure.